quick, speaking of disagreement, I know we're going to talk about Mark Lamont Hill in a minute, and but I'd like to, if I can, just squeeze in here a bit of praise and again slight disagreement. I mentioned this on the remix yesterday. Mark Lamont Hill, I think, has been doing, and I think Geechee, we might I might slightly disagree with both of you on this one when we get to it, but I think relatively speaking, he's been doing uh, uh, yeoman's work, if I can make a Navy reference, in mainstream media space defense of logic around Palestine and Israel. But he tweeted the other day one of those things that I'm defensive about, and I admit it, around academics not stepping up and defending Palestine and walking off ivory tower style, da 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 da. And I just wanted to again point out, I mentioned it yesterday, but there's something, even more has somewhat gone on to sort of make my point that I want to share here. That there are faculty who do things, who do attempt to defend Palestine and are themselves attacked for it. And I just like to acknowledge that that fact is real and exists, and that people like, in this case, Professor Russell Rickford up there at Cornell University, who gave a speech recently, and I would argue in defense of logic, has been condemned for being seen as defending Palestine. And I bring this up, and I want to point out to all the jokes around me being petty, I want to claim my credit for some principle here, because Rickford and I have had a word or two over his, I thought, overt passing and inappropriate condemnation of our work criticizing Manning Marables a couple years ago. And Rickford, even though he and I had been in touch with one another and had been in contact with one another, without mentioning to me, publicly took shots at our work and never gave us a chance to build. But that never, so all that aside, he was correct in his speech. And I'll just read an excerpt. I'll just show a little bit of an excerpt here of what I think got him in most trouble. But I think he was right to say, until we end the occupation, until we end the settler colonial project, until we end apartheid, everywhere is war. Everywhere is war. Everywhere is war. I close with a word for the young people, particularly the students who are losing their fear, It's such a beautiful thing to see unfold. So I just wanted to, I encourage people. There is, I can put the link in the chat. There is, or people, I'll put the link in the chat to sign the change.org petition in defense of his free speech, and that representative of other faculty who are trying to make the appropriate use of our position to stand in defense against genocide, et cetera, and so forth, but who are attacked for it. So there it is. All right, that was it. That was all I wanted to say on that, and I appreciate that. We can move on, but and the link is in the chat for those who might want to sign.
But that's an extremely old tactic of ignoring someone and then pretending they don't they failed to speak out. I mean, every single academic I know is not only anti-Zionism, that I know personally is anti-Zionists and made a statement, but you can't keep bringing on and they don't give platforms to the anti-Zionist struggles, especially in times of relative calm, and the times of relative calm when the conflict is essentially just one-sided, and there is no active resistance. So they ignore you and then condemn you for being quiet. When they ignore you when you speak. So that's old. That they do that against all oppressed population. It's no different than when there's a police shooting and then people say, "Oh, black people speak out when it's a cop that kills black people, but they don't speak out when black people kill other black people." When all throughout the community there's various anti-violence and peace, and they pull that shit against all oppressed populations.
Right on. Okay. Right on.
So
yeah, go ahead.
No,
yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, I probably was having my expectations too high for Mark, especially after seeing him handle a couple people on his show. But I just feel like, one,
You're talking about when he went on Breakfast Club.
Yeah, when he went on the Breakfast Club. I feel like the fact that Breakfast Club interviewed the dude from ADL, then Mark, and then Mark opens up by saying, "Well, we agree." But I just feel like Charlemagne said a whole bunch of shit, including envy, that Mark could have checked. Although Mark did share some
DJ
video.
Inmate.
Yeah, that was
what happened?
He's no longer DJ NV. He's DJ Inmate.
Your boy going down. But no, but I think
that's Mark not funny. Nobody should go to jail.
I think Mark did share some stuff that can lead people to come into a better analysis and conclusion. But I think there was also a bunch of conflation and conceding that he didn't have to do. And I don't know if I don't know if it's a matter of him, like you said earlier, him trying to come back to the show or him actually agreeing with the shit. Because at one point he did say he agreed with Hamas charter saying, we want to kill Jews, and that's not what the charter said.
Well, I did look up the charter, and I think it does say that.
Well, the charter
the 1988 charter.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But there's two, because there's one on Hamas on Hamas link. But if you're looking at the charter that has a quote from their scripture, and then their interpretation of that quote, that's something else. But the Israeli or the Christians have quotes about killing people as well. So I don't know if you're gonna take a quote from their book and say that that's what they're.
Well, hold on. That's two separate issues. Whether other people talk about genocide is separate from whether Hamas does, and it to me is. I was just looking at it this morning, and it's not just the biblical reference. It's stated. Well, I'm talking about the one specifically for 1988, which I understood was the one that was still in use. So I may be wrong on that. But my point, though, there's a couple points about that that I really wanted to get, because to me it's clearly does say that it's because they point out that pointing both to that biblical reference and to their stated. Okay, Ricky's saying it's not in use, so I don't know. They changed the charter. My point is, it
don't matter.
It didn't, right. To me, the real issue is Hamas had been first of all, the real issue is Israel is occupying and colonizing them. Hamas gets themselves elected. If that's the people, if that's the representative, the legit democratic representative of the people, so be it. If whether the charter said that or doesn't, it's still being claimed to be saying that by people to this day, and it to do only to justify the ongoing occupation and settler colonial occupation of those people, not to actually deal with the conditions that might offer alternatives for people to choose should they want to address and correct the problem. So in other words, if even if the charter did say that, every other effort and avenue that they have attempted to redress this horrific situation has been prevented. So to then turn around after the conclusion by some that military action is necessary to point to their charter at any point and that it may or may not have said whatever it said to justify condemnation and reprisals and worse abuse, and to Mark Lamont Hill's point, to accurately point out that not only are they engaged in collective punishment, but they're also breaking international law in a secondary sense by disproportionate response being involved in what's going on there as well. So really, that was really the point I was trying to get at. It doesn't matter to me whether or not the charter says that. If in fact it is a response to oppression, and if in fact, based on the United Nations definitions of genocide, even before Israel engages in all the bombing, the simple colonization and pen that the Palestinians are held in is itself a slow motion genocidal, I believe, fits under that international law definition of international law, or at least should. So, and that was it. I'll stop there.
No, I put the a little clip. Well, I just mixed up a couple of the questions that they had. Some Mark response, but then some clips from us. But
and yes, Ricky, of course, right. Thank you very much again, Ricky. Yes, and as I've mentioned, we've also mentioned as well. I appreciate Ricky's frustration with some of our shortcomings, but that is, we did point out, I and others have pointed out on the platform, that Israel supported the development of Hamas against the secular and more radical other formations. So, but anyway, so Mark, I thought, did a good job of at least mentioning that. I thought Mark, again, he is an Al Jazeera host. He is a Griot host. He is someone who wants to be in those spaces, and he was set up from jump by having to respond out the gate, as you already mentioned, to them saying, hey, we just interviewed the head of the ADL, Greenblatt, who gave us his view, having set that as a standard and a basis for an approach and a frame. So it puts, I don't know Mark that well, but it puts people in that position in a defensive almost corner where they are forced to say, or compelled at least, or encouraged to say something along the lines of, well, where we do agree is that all of this is horrific, as Mark started off the interview. But I thought I thought relative to that space, he had to break down a lot of the history very quickly, getting into some of the nuance for Charlemagne, or as because I also went and found Funkmaster Flex recent broadcast where he continues to call Charlemagne lesser charged Leonard for having again back 20 years ago accepted a lesser charge on that R word claim against the 15-year-old.
No, there's still stuff rumbling.
There's still stuff coming. Oh, there's still stuff, I know, but that was the particular reference that Flex was making in that, calling him lesser charge Leonard. So he kept saying, look here, lesser charge Leonard.
Very small community.
Hit
that clip real quick, and I guess we can come up with
what clip am I hitting?
In the chat, private chat. The Instagram clip.
The first one?
Well, they're the same, but I just realized.
The same? Okay. Hold on. Dead air.
Jonathan Greenblatt here, the head of the ADL. And, of course, he's I would say pro-Israel. That's safe to say, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And, Mark, I was thinking about all the people that I know who've been to Israel, been to Pakistan, who've been speaking about this issue for a long time.
For a long time.
And Mark has not only just been one of them, Mark has taken bullets.
Now, you did say their attack was not by the rules, right? Of war.
And neither are Israel's.
Right. So now with Israel talking and I guess sending flyers and pamphlets out and says, we're giving you 24, 48 hours to leave Gaza. We're going to start bombing Gaza. And I heard this morning on the news that said, the hospitals are saying we can't get out. We can't get these people out because by the time we try to get them out, they will die. Right.
Yep.
So if, let's say, Hamas is not following the rules, a lot of people say, well, why should Israel follow the rules?
Palestinian land being settler colonized.
What is your thoughts on, Jonathan was also upset with some chapters of Black Lives Matter supporting
Black Lives Matter Chicago.
Yeah. It was a couple of chapters actually that were supporting Palestine and Hamas. What's your thought on that? And the reason we asking all these questions is because, I'm not versed. I don't know if Charlemagne is versed, but
I'm not versed. I guess if they want to, my thing would be pass the microphone to somebody who knows what they're talking. I guess if they want to, my thing would be pass the microphone to somebody who knows what they're talking. I guess if they want to, my thing would be
pass the microphone to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
I guess I keep getting slightly confused because we talk about Hamas and Palestinian citizens, and I wonder if that's fair. And the reason I say that because it feels like Hamas is willing to sacrifice the Palestinian people because they have to know you're not going to win a war with Israel. They had to know when they committed that act of terror what the response was going to be, and they had to know that so many innocent Palestinians were going to be killed because of it.
This motherfucker.
spitting on Christians,
Ichi
mocking
Mike,
and
these
celebrating the
clips,
murder
boy.
of Palestinians,
Jesus
committing
Christ.
violent hate crimes against Palestinians, watching Gaza get carpet bombed from a cliffside for entertainment. Half of Israeli high schoolers don't think Arabs should have the right to vote. Another poll showed that almost half of Israeli Jews don't want Arabs teaching their kids. Not only are these views widely held in Israeli society, they're also represented in government, which codifies these sentiments into laws. In 2018, Israel passed the nation-state law, a law which has constitutional status, which says the right to exercise national self-determination, i.e. have rights, is the exclusive right of Jews, no one else. There's also the Nakba law, which makes it illegal to acknowledge the Nakba, the expulsions of Palestinians that were needed to found Israel.
But we also have to recognize that it's not like things were getting fixed and Hamas went and messed them up. They were dying anyway. Palestinians are dying every single day. Those hospitals already don't have enough power. People die. Those hospitals are death camps anyway.
Damn. Can you explain Hamas's relationship to the Palestinian government, or is Hamas the Palestinian government?
They say a lot of people that Hamas is what, even what Jonathan Greenblatt said was, they're setting up in churches, they're setting up in hospitals, they're setting up in schools, they're setting up in daycares.
I have yet to see intelligence reports to say that. The problem is they say Hamas is everywhere. They say Hamas is everywhere and they have tunnels everywhere. So then when you blow up a school, that school is filled with children. And they say, well, yeah, but Hamas was in there. The narrative is constructed as if Palestinian people stand in front of their babies with guns and force you to kill both of them. Right? That's the narrative.
This framing is completely wrong. The day the counteroffensive was launched, every major political party and faction in Palestine wrote statements calling for an intensification of resistance on all fronts. Fatah, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine,
right there.
the Palestine People's Party, the Lion's Den, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Well, some of these groups are religious and some are secular, some are socialist and some are nationalist. All of them are united by the fact that they want to end the Israeli occupation. All Palestinians are sick and tired of the 75-year genocidal occupation of Palestine. So why should anyone in the West be forced to condemn the resistance when no one in Palestine has?
Thousands of Palestinians have been killed and we're pretending like it's just okay. And it's not.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. Like, why do people have to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine? Like, I'm pro, I don't want to see kids get killed. I'm pro, I don't want to see innocent civilians get killed.
Innocent people,
I'm anti-war. Like, why do people have to pick a side? Like, I don't understand.
Why do we have to pick
They say
a
they're
side?
a government, but their charter just says they want to destroy Israel and kill Jewish people. So it's like, can you negotiate with somebody if that's literally your charter?
There's a problem that you have a lot of people who claim that when you talk negatively against Zionism, that you're automatically anti-Semitic, that you're automatically, and all of this really means is that you are dissenting from this order of white supremacy.
I guess that's why I don't like conflating the two, Hamas and Palestinians, because Hamas charter literally does say they want to destroy Israel and kill Jewish people.
But this is also a story of empowered resistance and Palestinians resisting this history that we're talking about. And you'll see, and I'm sure maybe you've already discussed on the show and at different times, but you know, last Saturday when this story was unfolding, there was
Did the video stop?
Oh, I think something happened on my
this
end. My
jubilation in Palestine that Palestinians in Gaza were breaking out of their prison. Palestinians in Gaza have been under siege for 16 years. Everything that goes in, everything that goes out, people, medicine, food, everything goes through Israel. And last Saturday, the walls that keep Palestinians caged in Gaza were physically torn down.
Is there some history between, for you, from Zionists to Palestine solidarity? And then how do you see maybe other Zionists or even Israel in support of Palestine? Like, what do those numbers look like? How many people is it?
I grew up in Philadelphia and the suburbs of Philadelphia in a conservative Zionist household. You know, I mean, I could tell you stories about what I was taught, what I, grew up in a conservative Jewish household. And really, sort of long story short, I mean, me and my path was when I was getting into high school, when I was starting to get politically involved, this was an issue I thought I knew something about because it's an issue that I'd been hearing about my whole life. And then very quickly, first book I read, started reading, I read Edward Said, I read Noam Chomsky, started reading some of these authors and quickly figured out that A, I'd been lied to, B, that there was a whole entire history that I had never been told. And, as I started getting then politically involved, it was an issue that I got politically engaged in, partly out of that desire to a feeling of accountability.
Last hour we had Jonathan Greenblatt.
So can I just go ahead? Well,
no,
I just
real quick a question. So Diallo first. I know we are kind of on the other side of the being the interviewee and having to check the interviewer as opposed to the interviewer checking the interviewee. So my question is, do you feel like Mark was effective in that space? I don't know how much you watch. If you watch all,
can we? But that's what I wanted to hold off on because before we go too far, because I wanted to insert this correction and update. Okay. So again, can I mute Diallo because that echo is disturbing? But from the Iran primer.usip.org that was just updated last night. In 2017, a revised Hamas manifesto included 3 departures from the 1988 charter from U.S. diplomat Aaron David Miller, told the Islamists. First, Hamas accepted the establishment of a Palestinian state separate from Israel, although only provisionally. Its statement on principles and policies said, quote, Hamas rejects any alternative to the full and complete liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. However, without compromising its rejection of the Zionist entity and without relinquishing any Palestinian rights, Hamas considers the establishment of a fully sovereign and independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital along the lines of the 4th of June, 1967, with the return of the refugees and the displaced to their homes from which they were expelled to be a formula of national consensus, end quote. Second, it attempted to distinguish between Jews or Judaism and modern Zionism. Hamas said that its fight was against the racist, aggressive, colonial, and expansionist Zionist project, Israel, but not against Judaism or Jews. The updated platform also lacked some of the anti-Semitic language of the 1988 charter. Third, the document did not reference the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood from which Hamas was originally an offshoot. So in just that 3-pronged summary, it feels like 100% of the framing of the mainstream press, even on that issue alone, is wrong. Again, I got this from the Iran Primer, the United States Institute of Peace. I'm putting the link in the chat. Coco is asking for the source. Of course, I'm going to supply sources. I don't ever do nothing without sources, so it's in the chat. You all can check me on that. But it seems like that would be an important update that most news organizations would want to include. All right, go ahead, Diallo. My bad.
So
Let me finish
the question. So, was he effective in that space? Is it a need to say he is liberal? He was being liberal. Is there a cost for the moments that he concedes to things that weren't true and not directly responding to the ignorance of both of the hosts? Like, there was a lot of shit that both of them were saying. So what is your—
Yes, I think he was ineffective in that space. I think I do think that on most of the issues he falls on the correct side, but I think he was extremely ineffective in that space. And that space, and that's not a condemnation of Mark. Can I call him Mark or Mr. Hill? but that space is structured for anyone coming with a radical or even a truly progressive analysis to be ineffective. I don't think effectiveness can be secured in that space. But I have to say something else, because this has been eating away at me. To both the Hamas apologist and the Hamas condemners, the fact that we are sitting here discussing Hamas means that they're winning. Even we who sit here and try to defend Hamas or try to clear the record on Hamas or give the true origins of Hamas or argue that the tactics and strategy of Hamas, the fact that we throughout this current uprising, I ain't heard the motherfucking IDF mentioned. I hear Hamas 1,000 times. I ain't heard the IDF. I ain't heard the Mossad. I ain't heard nobody talk about Mossad. I ain't heard nobody talk about CIA, the United States military, the UN Security Council. The fact that we are sitting here discussing the justification or the condemnation of the victims of genocide instead of discussing the genociders. It's just amazing to me.
I don't think
No,
that's happening.
I'm not saying you. I'm talking about the larger, that whole interview. Hamas. I just went to and saw this other community member, this prominent member of the community for consciousness progress, and he's talking about Hamas and Hezbollah. I don't think. Only thing I don't even think, and I know, especially if you're going on mainstream media, I think it is their objective to keep us debating and discussing and justifying and defending Hamas. But if we're defending the Hamas and we go into these discussions with the Zionists defending Hamas and trying to say, well, Hamas this, well, Hamas is on the civilians, and nobody talks about the IDF, nobody talks about the Mossad. I mean, that to me is still being a Hamas apologist, because I think Hamas, I support. And it was the same thing with the invasion, the war on terror. And we're all talking about the Iraqi insurgents. The Iraqi insurgents, are they justified? Are they wrong? Are they truly terrorists or not? Iraqi insurgents. We're talking about in Afghanistan, the Taliban, or they're coming back, the Taliban. It's like the genociders, the IDF, the US military, they're legitimate, they're fixed, they're a force, they exist, and that's just air. That's air. They're just there. So we have to debate these various groups. It's like he said, the Israelis, the US government, are not fighting against Hamas. They are not fighting against Hamas. The one guy that was in the video we just saw saying this is a Palestinian uprising. They are not bombing Hamas. They are not fighting Hamas. They are not trying to prevent Hamas. They are committing genocide against. So I think the strategy going forward for anyone who is on the correct side, anti-Zionist position, that when these Zionists or both siders come to us, we should be like, Hamas is not the issue. I think someone else accurately said the genocide. I mean, Mark said the genocide predates Hamas. The genocide predates Hamas. The genocide continues whether there is resistance or passivity. We have an example with the West Bank and Gaza, or in those two areas, one side is governed by the PLO. One side is doing what the Zionists say they should do. You know, they should be peaceful. They should not attack. They should petition the world community. They should appeal. The one side that's doing everything that the Zionist says that the Palestinians still do are suffering more aggressive land theft. They're having more aggressive Zionist expansion into the peaceful occupied territory than the others. So I don't understand how we can talk about that to me would be no different than we talking about the Nazis advancing on the Eastern or Western Front. And we spend most of our time talk about the people who are resisting in the woods and the little bands, little guerrilla bands that have come together to attack the advancing Nazi blitzkrieg, whether or not, well, what's their charter? Oh, how many innocents have they killed? And I just think we have fallen into a trap set by the propaganda, the corporate, Zionist, capitalist, Western, racist, white propaganda apparatus that we spend so much time talking about Hamas. To me, you go into somebody's land, you commit genocide to them, you forfeit any consideration from those people. They have what I'm with Neely Fuller on that maximum emergency compensatory justice. So I don't think Hamas should be within our discussion. We should be talking about the IDF, Mossad, the United States military. Nobody's even talking about the military infrastructure that the United States is sending over there. They got super tankers and goddamn aircraft carriers in the Straits of Hormuz, and the United States is fully engaged in this military conflict. They're not passive. We talk about the money they send, because there's people out here trying to conflate that with they send money to Israel and our reparations. The United States U.S. military infrastructure is being fully deployed against these two people and so I'm sick of talking about Hamas. I think all we should say is Hamas has every right to do whatever they think they can do in order to defend themselves. And this ain't even Hamas. And we need to start saying Palestinians. We're not talking about Hamas. We're talking about the Palestinians, because that's who they're attacking. That's who's dying. And this is not a Hamas versus Israel. This is Zionist. This is Israel. This is the Western world capitalist hegemony attacking all of us, really. But in this particular instance, their focused attack on the Palestinian people in the occupied territories in the West Bank and Gaza.
So I believe this is a very similar situation and argument that people are arguing in the Sahel and also in IT. But Jared, will you agree? Well, you kind of said you think he was effective in the space. He did say it happened before Hamas, but he also made sure that he was clear that he disagreed with Hamas.
But I didn't say I don't think I said he was effective, because I agree with Diallo. There is no effective from our perspective in that space. What I was saying was he did as well as could be expected in that space for someone who wants to get back into that space. So, and I'm not even accusing him of making some sort of conscious effort to censor himself. I'm saying that he's aware of how to frame an argument for a mainstream audience, and he does as well with extending logic and reality into those discussions in those spaces as I think can be done. But to say that he was effective, no. So sorry, what was the rest of the question?
You can say he was tactical.
Yeah.
He was very tactical. He was articulate. Mm-hmm. But in terms of effective, I don't think it's obvious he didn't change lesser charge. He didn't change he didn't change DJ inmate. He didn't change their positions. And I would say that even though we don't have the data, I don't think anybody going into that interview would gain greater clarity or change their positions as well. I think as we watch, as people who are already anti-Zionist, we can find things in there we will celebrate. And but I think pro-Zionist, as they watch that, pro-genociders, as they watch it, and especially because of the effectiveness of lesser charge and inmate, everybody can walk away from that and that's what makes those shows popular, that being able to straddle the fence that way and both sides genocide. So I don't think Mark was wrong in his assessments, but I don't think he was effective in changing the narrative.
So Jared, I mean, I guess the second part of it you answer, but would you say that there is a way to disagree and confront the ignorance or lies and still be welcome back?
No. I mean, not in any real meaningful way. Not more than what we saw from Mark in that interview. So no, I just don't. I mean, And first of all, Inmate and Lesser Charge and their producers would assure that if he ended up really trying to do that, that they would intervene, they would shut it down. They were already setting sort of frames and barriers to the conversation and putting them speed bumps to his analysis just in the way they were asking questions and responding. So if he had gotten any more aggressive or assertive or militant or effective by our standards, they would have absolutely been interrupting and cutting him off and or censoring the whole joint, just unplugging the whole episode. The purpose was to have Greenblatt. That was the purpose. Get Greenblatt on, and then they can bring Mark on to seemingly offer some relative balance, because they know when they leave the studio, even they know, when Inmate and Lesser Charge leave the studio, everybody they talk to is raising, if it comes up at all, is raising some sort of criticism of Israel. So they already know what's happening in outside. They just know what they cannot bring inside.
Right.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, and listen, I think he'd have been more effective if he walked on that show and was like, listen, I have a solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. I think that the Zionists who are seeking a homeland should get with DJ Envy and his partners and consult with them on some real estate and get them people their land back. And I think that would have been more effective, because, I mean, when we try to sit across from literal clowns, literal coons and minstrels, when you sit across from minstrels and try to and respect them and engage with them like they're serious people, I think you give legitimacy. I think Mark did more to legitimize those two minstrels than he did to articulate the atrocities and articulate the suffering. So when you he should have got down on their level. When they go low, we kick them in the face.
And that's the only reason I added that caveat initially, that if he wanted to return, because had he done that would have been the grand opening, grand closing. You know what I mean? It would have.
Yeah, but if we want to deal with effectiveness,
no, you're right,
and effective.
You're right. I mean, it would have been great. And had they not censored it and cleaned it off of YouTube so the rest of us could see it, it would have been even better.
Right. Because listen, if somebody get naked, you get naked. You don't stand there adjusting your tie while the person across from you is butt naked. Everybody get naked. We either all gonna be proper or we gonna all be naked. It's either one. So you throw down the tomahawk. I think he shouldn't have sat across from those two absurd individuals.
Right.
And try to articulate or plead the case.
Argument. So had Geechee been able to secure me that interview with Lesser Charge, I should have not gone at all, because that would have been legitimating the platform.
Or you could have walked in there with your red nose and your clown shoes and threw down. But that's it. That's your only option.
Right.
That's your only option, because that's what he did. You see how he played Dr. Fubar. And they pretty much mined his interview for a bunch of memes and quotables.